favorite sports, and one of ours too. Today's professional football is played in the National Football League.
What we see today is very different from the way the sport started over 100 years ago. In 1869, Rutgers and Princeton played the first soccer football game, and they called it rugby. Over the next 7 years, rugby began to become more popular than soccer at colleges in the U.S. Eventually, college football developed from rugby in 1876. The first rules for football were written by Walter Camp, who became known as the father of football. The first professional football game was played in 1892 when William Pudge Heffelfinger was paid $500 to play in a game between the AAA and Pack. The AAA won the game when the Pack fumbled and Heffelfinger ran it back for 35 yards for a touchdown.
In 1896, the AAA played a 2-game season with all professional or paid players. In 1898, a Chicago neighborhood team named Morgan Athletic Club was started and eventually became the Arizona Cardinals, the oldest professional football team still playing today.
When football started, a touchdown was worth 4 points and a field goal was worth 5 points. In 1898, they changed a touchdown to 5 points and then to 6 points in 1912. Field goals changed to 4 points in 1904 and 3 points in 1909.
Passes were not legal until 1906, and the first pass in a professional game was on October 25th, 1906. Different teams and leagues had different rules until 1920 when the American Professional Football Conference started with teams from
1921, there were 22 teams in the APFC, including the Green Bay Packers, who are still playing today. The American Professional Football Conference changed their name to the National Football League in 1922. Continue the use of
First, football uniforms were all different. Some were used uniforms. Jerseys were made of wool and helmets were not mandatory. In 1948, the first helmet design was worn by the Los Angeles Rams, and teams began using color combinations. Plastic helmets became popular in the 50s, and uniforms became more stylish. Face masks became popular in the 60s and were used by most players by the 70s. Many of today's uniforms started in the 80s, and jerseys began
During the Great Depression, the NFL dropped to only 8 teams. They also made lots of rules change that separated them from college football. Inbounds lines and goalposts were added, and forward passes were allowed anywhere behind the line of scrimmage.
They also decided to separate the teams into 2 divisions and have a championship game every year. The first NFL championship game was held at Wrigley Field on December 17, 1933. The Bears beat the Giants 23-21. In 1936, a rival league started named the American Football League.
During World War II, many players left the league. 21 NFL players died in the war. Many rules also changed. The playoff system and free substitution were added.
The first NFL championship game was on TV in 1951. The Rams and Browns were paid $75,000 for the game. In 1956, regular season games were shown on TV. Today, the TV stations and advertisers pay billions for the game.
There have been a lot of changes since football started. Today, the highest paid player is Drew Brees of the New Orleans Saints. He signed a 5-year, $100 million contract in 2012 with a $37 million signing.
There are 32 teams in the NFL now. Today, 64% of Americans watch NFL football, 73% of men, and 55% of women.
There have been lots of changes in football over the years, but it is still one of America's favorite sports to play and watch.
We hope you learned something about our favorite sport. Go Raiders!
Go Falcons!